Okay, folks, welcome to GTHLCanada.com. Peter Curtis, and today I'm proud to welcome onto our website here, Jamal Mayers from, I guess, Missouri, in the middle of no snow there. Thanks for joining me, Jamal.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about back in the day. Wow, it's a long time ago now, but I certainly enjoyed my time in the GTHL. It was called the MTHL back then.
Okay, Jamal, I mean, you're part of our Black History Month, and it used to be called a celebration. It still is. But in the year 2021, is celebration the right kind of word to be using for this focus now that the world has changed and hockey's facing some real challenges?
It doesn't matter what you call it necessarily. I think just talking about things is what's important. And I think that for every family, and I've been so fortunate and blessed to be a part of the game for my entire life. I have so much to be grateful for. And I think that it's incumbent upon the leaders of our great game to make sure that our game remains and becomes more inclusive, inviting, and exciting and attracting for families to want to put their kids in the game. And so it's an important time to recognize this month and to celebrate, absolutely, but also to highlight how far we've come, but also how much more we have to do.
Okay. And I mean, your story started at Flemingdon Park Arena, which is now renamed Angela James Arena after another trailblazer, a woman of color. We know you went Leaside Kings, George Bell House League, Don Mills Flyers. I mean, I know you're going to tell me about some real positives, but were there some challenges, with race and racism in hockey when you were a youth growing up?
Sure. I think that, and actually I used to go to Flemingdon Park when it was called Flemingdon Park with Ange. She's about 5 or 6 years older than my brother. Her mom is actually my godmother.
Oh,
so
wow.
I've known Ange my entire life. And so were there challenges? Absolutely. I think that growing up and having success, whether it was at the Leaside Kings or perhaps even with the Don Mills Flyers, like anything, there was jealousy at times, whether it was parents and or kids, and certain things were said on the ice. And I just looked at it as another challenge, to be quite honest with you. It became part of battling through, if you will. And it's unfortunate because now that I look back on it, to be honest with you, Peter, I think I looked at it as any other player. When you're evaluating a player, they would say, oh, well, he's too small, he's too short, he's not aggressive enough. And so for me, overcoming those types of obstacles in a player's career, I kind of took it the same way, where people would think, well, no, you can't play the game, or you shouldn't be playing the game, or would say things that are hurtful. I looked at it, and I give credit to my brother and my mom for, telling me the best way to make people upset is not to retaliate, not to get upset. It's actually to go score another goal. And so I try to put all my energies and focus into that. And the reason why I think it's so important we do this work is because I tolerated it and found a way to get through it. I think I've come to the realization now that I'm in my 40s that my hope is that we change that so that kids don't have to tolerate it, that everyone's included. The entire BIPOC and LGBTQ community is included and accepted, so that everyone can get what's great about our game out of it. And so that's really been my focus for the last several years, is to make the game more inviting and accepting of others. And I will say this, a lot of times, not only in Canada, but in the United States, when we do things for the underserved community or the Black community, it's always perceived as charity. And I think there's two pieces to it. There's servicing that component, but there's also attracting families that can afford our game, because let's be honest with ourselves, it's an expensive sport. But are we doing enough as a sport to attract families diverse families from entering the space, because if you're a parent of a 9 or 10-year-old and you're seeing hockey as, in a certain light, you want your kids to feel accepted, welcome, and grow as people. If it's not a welcoming environment, why would you ever put your child in that environment? So I think as a sport, we have to do a better job of being intentional about attracting families like that, so that they can see, wow, there is real value in the lessons that you learn, the teamwork aspect of our great game, and all the lessons of hard work and perseverance, and really you grow as a person by playing this game.
Well, that's great. So obviously the older version of you is going to tell the younger version a little bit different, with the hope, of course, with the hope. So now I did some scouting here. I went to get the scouting report on you from the Don Mills Flyers. So I had to go to the old hockey guys. And Jamal, you know what the first couple things I heard were? Amazing mother. It wasn't playing style. So I mean, your mother, Doreen, I mean, I tried to get some goodies out of you, you know, maybe a story, and it was an amazing story to hear about your mom's involvement, helping you get to the rink, and your brother, Alan, talking about that. So family is a big part of what we're trying to get everyone involved in the game. And I mean, you had the chance to play that maybe your brother gave to you, right? So, I mean, the financial obstacles of this game, I mean, what are some of the things you think we can do to show people that the game has an entry level, which isn't as expensive as you might think?
Well, I think first off, there's a lot of great programs out there already. I think that the NHL, in each NHL city, is the NHLPA and the NHL have partnered to create programs for a learn to play programs in in every city. And so what they try to do is they try to introduce kids to the game for less than $150. And with that $150, you get full head to toe gear, 10 lessons of hockey instruction. You get to keep the gear. And because if you think about it, you're right, it's a challenge for a lot of families. And I was not excluded in that example. When I was 10, my brother was 16 and he played, and we couldn't afford for both of us at the time. I believe it was $500 to play, and we couldn't afford it. So he played, and I kept watching him, and he saw how much I missed it and didn't play the next year so I could continue. And so it's a real layered question. I think there's got to be programs and charities out there that can help fund those needs. I think introduction to the sport is probably the first hurdle that has to be overcome. Programs like the NHL and NHLPA's initiative help that, because it's a lot easier to give your son or daughter a basketball, soccer ball, and say, go out there and play. Hockey is a little more involved. And if your child says they want to play, immediately parents think about, wow, that's going to be expensive. There's no question it's a barrier. I think that there are ways that we can get around that. I think that over time, to sustain it, you will have to invite corporate sponsors perhaps that would love to partner with programs to help underserved kids stay in the game.
Okay, and I mean, a little bit about the goal program there in the Chicago area. I mean, you're making inroads, taking this game. Is the goal program getting to where you wanted? Could it be bigger?
It's a wonderful program. So we visit over 150 schools a year in the Chicagoland area, mostly Hispanic and African-American students in these schools. We eliminate the ice component to start. So imagine when we all grew up in Canada, it was much more organic in respect to going outside and playing ball hockey, street hockey, and figuring it out. And so we're able to get those kids engaged and interested and teach them at that granular level. And we've had unbelievable amounts of success. And so the nice thing is that those programs then parlay into the next piece and component, which is called First Stride. So those students that have participated in goal for a year can then participate in First Stride, where we eliminate, again, all the other obstacles. We bus the kids to the practice facility. They get to try skating for 10 lessons. And then beyond that, it rolls into the Little Hawks program in Chicago, where kids can then try hockey if they enjoyed the skating component. So there's programs like that are popping up around the league that are integral in getting kids engaged. And I mean, we've seen, over 70,000 kids a year in Chicago alone are participating or at least trying hockey in their phys ed class.
Okay, and we know Willie O'Ree's number is going to be retired this month. Mike Marson, we call him the Scarborough legend because I'm in Scarborough, so we have to pipe up Mike. But did you view them as role models, or were there just so few of them that you were kind of felt you were on your own when you were playing youth hockey?
There's no question any kid looks for people that look like them to see it's possible. I think it's important, and we talk about that all the time, is that you have to see it to believe it. And so for me, I certainly was aware of Tony McKegney and Grant Fuhr and Claude Vilgrain and others, Dale Craighead, and guys that were doing it made you think, oh, it's possible. And having grown up with Anson Carter and watching him develop, and we were the same age, played for Don Mills Flyers, our bantam year together. It was nice to have someone else that was doing it as well to see that it's possible. And I think that's important for kids as they grow. And then as you get older, you start to learn different stories and hear about different people in the game. And Willie O'Ree, certainly his story of what he's accomplished, and rightfully is inducted into the Hall of Fame, and now will have his number retired. So it's quite special, and it's important for kids to see and understand the deep imprint Blacks have had in the game that really started in the Maritimes.
So now when you're out with these programs here and kids of color come up to you, are they still kind of shocked that you are one of those guys that played in that NHL thing, that white guy sport? Are they still finding it surprising?
Absolutely. I think that they're intrigued. They tend to listen. But we kind of get them in a little bit of a sweet spot, to be honest with you. They listen a little bit better when they're 9 to 13. It's a little more difficult once you get past into the teenage years, as you know. But yeah, there's no question. Yeah, but once they see you stick handling in their gym class, they figure it out pretty quickly that, okay, he knows what he's doing, and you try to have fun with the kids and make sure they're having a good time and enjoying the game.
That's great. So, I mean, you played junior hockey as really a young guy. I mean, you were 16, and then you went the NCAA route. So you're playing NCAA, you're having some success, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. What did you think would happen to you once you got through hockey? Did you think you had a better chance becoming a Stanley Cup champion or a book author?
Jeez, I would say an author, but my passion really was to get into advertising and write and be a part of that world, maybe in the sporting world, but be a part of advertising and things of that nature. That's I got my degree in business and marketing. But even after I got drafted, that's when you kind of thought maybe there's a chance. But my focus was to get my degree, and if I could get my college degree from playing hockey, that was amazing for me, and that was kind of where I thought it would end, and things kind of just progressed from there through my years playing at Western Michigan, and the rest is history. But yeah, there's no way I would have thought I would have won a Stanley Cup if you asked me when I was 17 or 18.
Well, 2013 Stanley Cup champion. But tell us a little bit about the book. Hockey is for me, and we want people to pick it up. I mean, I've got 2 young kids. I only look for hockey books. I get in trouble with my wife, but tell me about the impetus and how the book came to be.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Honestly, my son was 5 years old. He's 8 now. And when he was around 5, we were always looking for books to read, and read him a bunch of the Brady books, which are fantastic. My former teammate, Brad Shaw's wife, wrote those books, and they're about his son, Brady, and their son Brady rather. And then so I kind of got this idea, well, I could write a book about how tough it was and how I grew up in Toronto, single parent family, and write that story. I feel like that story's been written. And so I started thinking, like, most of what the game's given me so much, and I wanted to write something positive and maybe throw in a few lessons along the way. And I just started writing, and I was writing it for my son, and started reading them to him at night. And I read him the first story, which is the first book, and then he would say, well, what happens next? And so I'd go back to, well, I don't know, I got to write another story. So I start writing another story, drawing on my experiences growing up. And then before I knew it, I had 5 books. Now we published the first one, which is Hockey is for Me. And it's basically about me starting and learning how to skate. And the idea of it was to highlight and show kids of color and minorities that it's possible. It shows there's lessons in there where you talk about perseverance and hard work. And so my hope is that what I didn't realize, I kind of wrote it for kids of color and families of color. What I've realized over the last couple of years, or year, I guess, is that the book is more likely more important for white families and kids as it is for kids of color. And the reason why, maybe the timing has been kind of good for this, but it's kind of given families an opportunity, and coaches and teachers, to bring up the topic of diversity inclusion and what that looks like in their everyday life, and how can they make, whether it's dance class or music or whatever they're involved in extracurricularly, how can they make those environments more inclusive, more inviting for families that don't necessarily look like them. And so what I found over this time is that I've had several white families saying, wow, this is a great book to teach my son or daughter about what diversity inclusion looks like, and how we can be move ourselves into more compassionate and becoming allies in helping kids feel more comfortable in a new space. And so that's really been the rewarding part for me in writing this book, is hearing those stories of families that have read it to their kids and have been able to talk about diversity and inclusion, what that looks like, and how they can, again, be allies.
And it's amazing to find that discovery for, like you say, for white families. So, we're at this time where, Canada's being challenged, the GTHL is being challenged to make the game inclusive. It's going to be a long road, but, what do you think should be some of the short-term goals we have here to make hockey inclusive? I know what we want long-term, but what can we do, with this current generation of hockey family to make the game more inclusive?
Well, I always say fix your own house first. And so we all love the sanctity of the locker room, right? We all love what that means and what that represents. And as you go through your playing career and as a coach now, and you get away from the game, what do you miss most? You miss that. You miss being around the room. And everyone who knows the game, who's been around the game at any level, really can appreciate the room. And so for me, the first thing that can be done is to create a zero tolerance language within that room, within the confines of that room. And what will happen is we're such an obedient culture in regard to following the rules and thinking about team first and understanding the value of everybody on the team, that if you establish that as an organization, GTHL, Hockey Canada, USA Hockey, where that any type of language that is hurtful or harmful in any way in that room, and you sign, let's say, a declaration saying that, now you're making sure that that is a protected space. You're not going to fix what's said at home instantaneously. What the hope, in my opinion, in starting there is you're going to create that as a safe place for kids to grow and learn, and with the understanding that that type of stuff, it may happen when they're on the way home from school, it may happen at school, but when they're inside the room, in the locker room, it's not going to happen. So that would be my first priority: create the locker room as a safe place. And from there, things will organically grow as you develop a more inclusive environment, and the coaching and the organization from the top down become more intentional about engaging families that don't look like the traditional family to play the game. So that's definitely where I would start.
Well, that's well spoken, Jamal. And I mean, I love the fact I'm watching you on TV and you have this big screen, and instead of a fancy clicker or graphics, you're using a hockey stick to diagram plays. So I guess you're an old school hockey guy who feels really comfortable with the hockey stick. And I wanted to thank you for your time today. I mean, we look forward to staying connected to you, Jamal, because you've got a role model job as a hockey analyst, but you've got some great ideas to help us with our game.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time. And again, thanks for having me on. It gave me chills to think back of my days playing in the league.